I handed over my bank account and my loyalty to my own flesh and blood, only to be turned away like a beggar at the door of their luxury wedding. Brace yourself, because my story is not just about family betrayal. It is a spectacular financial trap that cost those leeches $75,000. Sometimes, the absolute sweetest revenge is not screaming or causing a scene. It is simply a single mouse click denying a massive payment. Hello, wonderful listeners of Maya Revenge Stories, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for your continued support. Unfortunately, YouTube has disabled our monetization feature, leaving our team without the budget to keep operating normally. If you enjoyed today's story, please consider supporting us by joining the Maya Revenge Stories Patreon, where you can listen to even more incredible, exclusive true stories that are longer, feature highly detailed situations we cannot share publicly on YouTube, and include multiple emotional voice actors bringing the drama to life. You can join us right now by scanning the Patreon QR code on your screen or by clicking the Patreon link in the description or the pinned comment of this video. Now, let us dive into today's story, where you will meet our main character, Riley Carter. I am Riley Carter. I am 32 years old, and I make my living tearing apart complex systems to find their weakest links. As an independent cybersecurity risk analyst and currently the project manager at the tech firm Aegis Nexus Solutions up in Seattle, my entire life revolves around anticipating disasters, spotting lies hidden deep in the code, and building impenetrable firewalls. I am entirely self-made. Every dollar in my bank account is the result of my own sleepless nights and relentless grind. I had to build my own empire because I knew early on that I could never rely on my blood relatives. My parents, Arthur and Margaret, live all the way across the country in the historic district of Charleston, South Carolina. They exist in a completely different reality than I do. They are utterly obsessed with social prestige, dedicating every waking moment and every borrowed dime to clawing their way into the Southern high society. To the outside world, they project the flawless image of generational wealth and aristocratic elegance. In reality, they run a failing real estate brokerage that is practically drowning in secret debt. Growing up, I was the black sheep, the ultimate disappointment. I was too practical, too blunt, and my wardrobe consisted of dark blazers and comfortable shoes. I never fit their polished, pastel-colored, country club aesthetic. I preferred writing security scripts in my bedroom over attending debutante balls, and they never forgave me for not being their perfect trophy daughter. Then there is my younger sister, Chloe. She is 25 years old, stunningly beautiful, and exactly the kind of golden child my parents always wanted to parade around. She knew how to smile for the cameras, how to wear the designer dresses, and how to charm the elite. A few months ago, Chloe called me in a frenzy of absolute excitement to announce she was getting married to Preston Vance. The Vances are a formidable political family in the South, sitting on what everyone in town assumed was a massive, untouchable mountain of old money. Almost immediately after the engagement was announced, the frantic phone calls from my parents started rolling in. Every conversation with Arthur and Margaret was a masterclass in passive-aggressive panic and financial desperation. Margaret would call me and sigh heavily into the receiver. The Vances just bought out the entire coastal resort for the rehearsal. Riley, if we do not secure the sovereign for the reception, we will be the laughingstock of the entire state. To keep up appearances and save face in front of the Vance family's elite social circle, my parents insisted that the bride's side absolutely had to host the main, extravagant wedding reception, and it could not be just at a nice hotel. It had to be aboard a legendary, multi-level super yacht named the Sovereign. The glaring problem was that they did not have the money. They were essentially broke, shuffling credit cards just to pay their mortgage. I had kept my distance from their superficial drama for years, perfectly happy in my rainy Seattle sanctuary, far away from their judging eyes. But then Chloe called me directly. She was sobbing hysterically, gasping for air on the phone. "Please, Riley, you have to save me," she begged through her tears. "The Vances will cancel the wedding if we cannot pay for the yacht. My perfect day will be ruined without that deposit. Despite years of being treated like an embarrassing outsider, I softened. She was still my little sister, and hearing her cry so desperately broke through the emotional firewall I had built around myself. I decided to help her, but I did it strictly on my own terms. Using my heavy black credit card, I agreed to sign the corporate contract for the yacht and paid the initial $10,000 deposit to secure the date. However, because of my extensive background in risk management, I refused to do anything without a safety net. I made sure a very specific, ironclad legal clause was written into the agreement. I, and only I, was the authorized guarantor on file. I made it explicitly clear to the yacht management that I was the sole person who had the legal right to approve the final $75,000 charge for the catering and the venue after the reception concluded. If my finger did not click the authorization button on my personal portal, the money would not move. As the weeks ticked down to the ceremony, the initial wave of false gratitude from my family completely evaporated, replaced by a sudden and chilling silence. I started noticing the digital breadcrumbs of my own erasure. It began with the group chats. I was abruptly removed from every single text thread regarding the wedding preparations. When I finally caught my mother on the phone to ask why my number was no longer included in the discussions about floral arrangements and the catering menu, Margaret brushed me off with a breezy, dismissive tone. "Oh, do not worry about it. Riley," she told me, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "The high society circle down here is incredibly strict about privacy and information leaks. Plus, you are all the way out there on the West Coast. We just did not want to bother you with the mundane details. Leave the stress to us." Her definition of privacy was laughably contradictory. While I was being locked out of the planning process, my social media feeds were flooded with their public declarations of grandeur. Margaret and Arthur were posting multiple times a day, carefully curating their image as wealthy, stealth money tycoons who were single-handedly funding the wedding of the decade. They posed with elite caterers, snapped close-up photos of imported crystal centerpieces, and boasted endlessly about their lavish contributions to their beautiful daughter's future. There was absolutely zero mention of the actual person holding the financial safety net. I was entirely ghosted from their public narrative. Exactly 1 month before the event, my physical mailbox remained empty. I had not received an official invitation with the heavy cardstock and gold lettering that Chloe had bragged about months prior. I texted Arthur to ask about the formal schedule, the dress code, and whether they had arranged a block of hotel rooms or a flight itinerary for me to get from Seattle to Charleston. The replies I received were agonizingly vague and evasive. My father finally texted back 2 full days later, stating, "We are incredibly overwhelmed hosting the Vance family right now. You are a smart girl. Just figure out your own travel arrangements. See you when you get here." It was a glaring red flag. In my line of work, ambiguity is the ultimate enemy. When people avoid giving you straight answers, they are usually hiding a much larger, systemic failure. My professional instincts, sharpened by years of tracing digital deception, fully kicked in. I make my living hunting down anomalies, and my family's behavior was a massive, blinking security threat. Sitting in my home office late at night, illuminated only by the glow of my dual monitors, I decided to run a quiet, unofficial background check on the event logistics. Using a few basic open-source intelligence techniques and my deep understanding of network vulnerabilities, it took me exactly 45 minutes to gently bypass the flimsy, outdated firewall of the boutique event planning company handling the reception. I accessed their internal database and pulled up the master spreadsheet for the event aboard the yacht. I ran a search query for my last name. I scanned the exclusive VIP list. Nothing. I filtered the data specifically for the bride's immediate family members. The names Arthur, Margaret, and Chloe were proudly displayed at the top in bold letters. But my name was nowhere to be found. I was not assigned a table. I was not listed under dietary restrictions. According to the official documentation, I simply did not exist. A cold, heavy stone settled deep in my stomach. The data was undeniable and right in front of my eyes. Yet a tiny, irrational part of me wanted to believe I was overthinking the situation. I tried to rationalize the gaping holes in the guest list. I told myself that the event planners were just incredibly incompetent, or that my parents were simply too stressed and frantic to manage the paperwork correctly. They were, after all, desperately trying to impress a family of ruthless political sharks. Despite the stinging hurt and the mounting suspicion clouding my judgment, I refused to let my pride dictate my actions. If this was just a chaotic oversight caused by wedding planning anxiety, I was not going to be the bitter, absent sister who ruined the mood. I opened a new browser tab and purchased a first-class plane ticket with my own money. I secured a premium suite at a boutique hotel near the harbor to ensure I would not be in their way, to prove my goodwill. I even went out and purchased a heavy designer crystal vase worth $5,000 as a wedding gift. I packed my bags, prepared for the absolute worst, but still foolishly hoping for the best. The salt air of the Charleston harbor was thick and humid, carrying the distant, elegant sound of clinking champagne glasses and the soft, rhythmic melody of a live jazz band playing on the upper deck. I stepped out of my premium rideshare vehicle exactly 30 minutes before the grand vessel was scheduled to lift its massive anchor. I had dressed meticulously for the occasion, determined to prove that I could fit into their world for just one night. I wore a sleek, floor-length, midnight blue gown that cost more than my first car, paired with subtle, understated diamond earrings. In my hands, I carried a heavy crystal vase safely secured in a velvet-lined box, a wedding gift worth $5,000. My heart was beating in a strange, irregular rhythm against my ribcage. The marina was illuminated by warm string lights, casting a golden, romantic glow over the gleaming white hull of the super yacht. It looked like a floating palace. I walked down the wooden pier toward the velvet ropes of the private security checkpoint, straightening my spine. Despite every logical alarm bell ringing in my head, I was ready to celebrate my sister. I was ready to be a family. I barely had time to hand my identification to the stern-looking security guard, holding a digital tablet before the heavy glass doors of the boarding terminal forcefully swung open. Arthur and Margaret rushed out into the humid night air. They did not walk gracefully. They practically sprinted, their faces flushed with a volatile mixture of sheer panic and absolute, unhinged rage. For a fleeting fraction of a second, the foolish, hopeful part of my brain thought they were hurrying to welcome me, to pull me into a warm embrace, and to frantically apologize for the ridiculous logistical mess of the past few weeks. But my father's face was twisted in a vicious, ugly scowl. He did not open his arms. Instead, he aggressively stepped directly into my path, physically blocking me from getting a single inch closer to the red carpet. He grabbed my elbow with a harsh, tight grip, leaning in so closely I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. "What on earth are you doing here?" he hissed, his voice trembling with contained, violent fury. "Get back in a car and go back to your hotel right this second. Now!" I froze, completely paralyzed by the sheer hostility radiating from the man who was supposed to be my father. Before my brain could even process his outrageous demand, my mother stepped forward. Margaret was wearing an extravagant champagne-colored dress dripping in heavy beadwork, her hair styled into an impossibly stiff, flawless updo. The look in her eyes was something I will never forget as long as I live. It was not just annoyance. It was pure, unadulterated disdain. She looked at me as if I were a filthy stray dog that had somehow wandered into an exclusive, Michelin-starred dining room. She stepped right up to my face, her voice dropping to a freezing, venomous whisper. "Only family allowed," she declared, articulating every single syllable with lethal, cutting precision. "You are not invited. We told you to stay away. Do not you dare ruin this night and embarrass your sister in front of high society. You do not belong here." The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest, knocking the air straight out of my lungs. "Only family allowed." The sheer, unadulterated audacity of that statement was so thick it was suffocating. I opened my mouth to speak, to loudly remind them exactly whose money had paid for the very dock they were standing on. But a sharp click-clack of designer high heels interrupted me. From behind the velvet ropes, a tall, incredibly elegant older woman dripping in authentic, heavy pearls glided toward us. I instantly recognized her from the local society pages. It was Eleanor Vance, the formidable matriarch of the political dynasty, the groom's mother. She wore an expression of polite curiosity that barely masked a hawk-like, calculating observation. "Margaret, darling, is everything all right out here?" Eleanor asked, her drawl smooth and dripping with aristocratic Southern charm. "Is there a problem with the guest list?" I watched, utterly fascinated and deeply horrified, as my mother's entire demeanor shifted in a microscopic fraction of a second. The dark venom vanished from her face, instantly replaced by a brilliant, radiant, and entirely fake smile. Margaret let out a soft, highly rehearsed laugh and lightly touched Eleanor's silk-clad arm. "Oh, Eleanor, it is absolutely nothing to worry about." Margaret lied, not blinking a single time. "This young woman is just an auditor for the yacht management company. She arrived at the completely wrong time to inspect the venue. Arthur is just politely explaining that she needs to come back tomorrow after the event is over." An auditor, an annoying employee, a complete stranger. I stood there, wrapped in a designer gown, holding a $5,000 wedding gift, listening to my own mother effortlessly erase my entire existence from her life just to maintain the fragile illusion of her flawless, wealthy pedigree. My gaze slowly drifted past Margaret, past the elegant Eleanor Vance, and looked directly through the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the terminal. Standing in the brightly lit, lavish reception area was the bride. Chloe looked like a bridal magazine cover in her custom lace gown, laughing brightly and holding a tall glass of champagne. Her arm wrapped tightly around her new husband, as if suddenly sensing the heavy tension building outside. She turned her head. Our eyes met perfectly through the thick glass. For one agonizingly long second, my little sister looked right at me. I saw the undeniable flash of recognition in her eyes, followed instantly by a wave of pure, selfish terror. She did not smile. She did not wave. She certainly did not come outside to defend me. Instead, she abruptly turned her back, raised her glass to the groom, and pretended she had absolutely no idea who the woman standing in the dark was. The final devastating piece of the puzzle violently clicked into place inside my analytical mind. They had not just forgotten me in the chaos of wedding planning, they had meticulously, deliberately buried me. To them, a pragmatic, self-made tech engineer did not fit into their carefully fabricated aristocratic lineage. I was nothing but a silent, reliable bank account, a dirty little secret they needed to hide away to secure their fake social standing among the political elite. The heavy sadness inside me evaporated instantly. The rage, which had been simmering in my gut for weeks, suddenly crystallized into a state of absolute terrifying clarity. I did not scream. I did not throw the heavy crystal vase onto the concrete pavement. I did not create a dramatic scene that would only serve to confirm their false narrative of me being a disruption. Instead, I stood incredibly tall, offered a warm, purely professional smile to Eleanor Vance, and gave her a polite, respectful nod. "My apologies for the intrusion," I said smoothly, my voice remarkably steady and calm. "Enjoy your beautiful evening." I turned my back on my parents, walked right past the bewildered security guard, stepped back into the exact same rideshare vehicle that had brought me, and drove away into the night. I returned to my premium suite overlooking the harbor. The heavy oak door clicked shut, sealing me in absolute silence. I stood in the center of the room, still wearing the midnight blue gown, the velvet box containing the $5,000 crystal vase resting on the glass coffee table. Most people would have collapsed onto the king-sized bed in a puddle of tears. They would have called a friend, screamed into a pillow, or drowned their sorrow in the minibar. I did none of those things. My eyes were completely dry. The burning humiliation I had felt at the security checkpoint had entirely evaporated, leaving behind a terrifyingly cold, hyper-focused state of mind. I was no longer a rejected daughter. I was a project manager dealing with a compromised asset. My family had officially become a liability, and it was time to cut the cord. I unzipped my dress, changed into a comfortable pair of dark gray sweatpants and a simple black sweater, and sat down at the mahogany desk. I opened my silver laptop. The screen illuminated the dark room. With a few swift keystrokes, I accessed the secure electronic payment portal for the management company that owned the Sovereign. My dashboard loaded instantly. Right in the center of the screen was a blinking, bright red notification. It was the final invoice for the night's extravagant festivities. Waiting patiently for my digital signature, I clicked on the document to expand the itemized list. The sheer scale of their indulgence was staggering. There were thousands of dollars racked up for top-tier imported vintage champagne, exorbitant charges for silver platters of beluga caviar, and a premium fee for an 8-piece live jazz band that was currently serenading the Vance family. The grand total glowing at the bottom of the screen was exactly $75,000. Next to that massive number was a prominent button that read, "Request Final Approval." I did not hover my mouse over the approval button. Instead, I pulled up the original digital document of the legally binding contract I had signed months ago. I scrolled down to subsection 4, paragraph B, the exact clause I had insisted they include to protect myself from my parents' notorious financial instability. I read the words aloud to the empty room. In the event that the primary guarantor declines final payment authorization, total financial liability and debt collection immediately and irreversibly transfer to the designated co-hosts of the event. Below that clause were the legally binding electronic signatures of Arthur Carter and Margaret Carter. They were so desperate to secure the yacht that they had signed the paperwork without ever reading the fine print. They had eagerly handed me the absolute power to destroy them, completely confident that my desperation for their love would keep my wallet open. They were wrong. My face remained entirely expressionless. I navigated back to the glowing payment portal. I moved my cursor away from the approval button and firmly clicked on the gray option labeled Decline Authorization. A small confirmation box popped up, requiring a written reason for the denial. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing a precise, sterile legal note. I did not attend this event. I did not utilize any of the provided services, catering, or entertainment. I was physically barred from entry by the co-hosts. Transfer this outstanding invoice immediately to the actual beneficiaries currently on board. I reviewed the text once, ensuring there was no emotion, no anger, just undeniable facts. Then, I hit submit. The screen refreshed. The massive $75,000 balance vanished from my personal dashboard, instantly rerouted to the failing bank accounts of my parents. I closed the laptop, slipping it into my backpack. I packed my small suitcase with surgical precision, leaving the crystal vase sitting uselessly on the table. By 4 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting in the quiet, empty terminal of the Charleston airport, sipping a black coffee and waiting for the earliest first-class flight back to Seattle. I looked out the massive windows as the sun began to rise over the southern horizon. Somewhere across the city, the luxury yacht was docking. The jazz band was packing up their instruments, and my family was stumbling back to their hotels, completely drunk on stolen champagne and fake prestige. They had no idea they were dancing directly on top of a massive financial time bomb, and I was miles away in the sky. Tuesday morning arrived in Seattle exactly the way I liked it, draped in a heavy, comforting blanket of gray rain. I was sitting at the polished granite island in my pristine kitchen, sipping a perfectly brewed cup of dark roast coffee before starting my workday. 3 days had passed since the extravagant circus at the Charleston Harbor. 3 days of absolute, blissful radio silence. Because of my background in risk management, I knew the exact timeline of corporate billing cycles. I knew that the elite management company overseeing the Sovereign gave their high-end clients a strict 72-hour grace period to settle outstanding balances before the automated financial systems flagged the account for severe delinquency. That grace period had officially expired. I checked my wristwatch. It was 9 in the morning on the West Coast, which meant it was exactly noon in South Carolina. The financial hurricane was about to make landfall. Right on cue, My cell phone vibrated aggressively across the granite countertop. The caller ID flashed a glossy, highly edited photo of Margaret. I let the phone ring 3 full times, savoring the absolute power of the moment. Before calmly swiping the screen to answer, I did not say a word. I just listened to the silence on the line. "Riley, sweetheart, how are you doing, honey?" Margaret chirped. Her voice was drenched in an absolutely sickening syrupy sweetness that made my skin crawl. It was the exact, calculated tone she used when trying to convince the country club board of directors to quietly waive her overdue membership fees. "Did you have a safe flight back home? We were just so incredibly busy entertaining the Vances that we barely had a single moment to breathe." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee. I remained entirely silent, letting her wallow in the awkward, suffocating dead air. Margaret cleared her throat nervously, her fake confidence faltering. "Anyway, darling, the strangest little glitch happened this morning. The management office from the yacht sent over an urgent, frankly very rude, notification. It seems your bank card accidentally blocked the final transaction. You must have accidentally clicked the wrong button on your payment portal. You know how confusing those computer systems can be. If you could just log back in and authorize the $75,000 right now, that would be wonderful. The yacht company is threatening to send the bill to collections, which is just ridiculous." I let out a sharp, genuine laugh that echoed loudly off my kitchen walls. The sheer, unadulterated delusion of her statement was breathtaking. "There was no computer glitch, Mother," I replied, my voice steady, sharp, and completely devoid of any familial warmth. "My technical skills are flawless. I clicked exactly the button I intended to click. As I recall, you stood at the security checkpoint in your heavily beaded gown, looked me dead in the eyes, and proudly declared, 'Only family allowed.' I simply respected your strict boundaries. Since I'm not considered family, I will certainly not be paying for exclusive family events. Let the family inside the yacht pay the $75,000 bill." The fake sweetness evaporated from the line in an instant. A muffled, violent scuffle echoed through the speaker before a booming, frantic voice took over. Arthur had physically snatched the phone from her hands. "Listen to me, you ungrateful little brat," Arthur roared. The polished, sophisticated Southern gentleman act was completely shattered, replaced by the panicked, breathless screaming of a drowning man. "You are going to ruin the entire future of this family. You cannot do this to us. We do not have a single dime to our names, our brokerage is practically underwater, and our credit cards are maxed out across the board. We needed this wedding to go flawlessly, so the Vances would give us their exclusive commercial real estate contracts to pay off our debts. You are destroying everything we have built. You built a fragile house of cards out of lies and maxed out credit." "Arthur," I shot back, dropping the title of father entirely, "I am just the wind blowing it down. You gambled with my money and my loyalty, and the house always wins." I hung up the phone and instantly blocked their numbers from my device. Less than 10 minutes later, a different international number lit up my screen. It was Chloe, calling directly from what was supposed to be her lavish, romantic honeymoon in the Maldives. I answered the call, placing her on speakerphone as I opened my laptop to begin my work. "Riley, please, you have to fix this immediately," Chloe wailed. There was no arrogance left in her voice, only raw, choking sobs of pure panic. "Preston's father just got an aggressive phone call from the yacht company's legal department. They are coming after my in-laws because my parents' credit cards were all completely declined. The Vances are furious. Preston is looking at me like I am a complete stranger. They are starting to heavily doubt everything about our family's financial background. You have to wire the money, please, or my marriage is over." My expression remained completely cold, unbothered by her theatrical tears. I leaned closer to the microphone. "You wanted the perfect upper-class aesthetic. Chloe, you wanted the rich husband, the perfect magazine photos, and the flawless aristocratic illusion. But a self-made tech worker sister did not fit into your pretty little picture, did she? You saw me standing outside the terminal window, and you turned your back on me. You actively participated in erasing my entire existence just to impress a family of strangers. I was scared. I panicked. I did not want them to judge us, she cried out defensively. And now you are paying the ultimate price for that panic. I cut her off sharply, my tone leaving absolutely no room for negotiation. I will never pay another single cent for people who stripped away my identity and treated me like a dirty secret. Welcome to the real world. Chloe, I hope your new husband has deep pockets to bail you out. I tapped the red icon on my screen, cutting off her hysterical cries, and finally enjoyed the absolute peace of my morning. The legal department representing the sovereign did not play polite society games. Exactly 1 week after the wedding, they officially filed a notice of intent to sue in civil court, with their credit completely obliterated and the threat of public bankruptcy looming over their heads. My father realized he was completely cornered. Stripped of all his arrogant pride, Arthur was forced to do the one thing he swore he would never do. He drove to the sprawling, historic estate of his new in-laws, the mighty Vance family, to beg for a temporary loan of $75,000 to cover the yacht invoice. He walked into their grand parlor, sweating through his tailored suit, and laid out his desperate situation, fully expecting the wealthy political dynasty to effortlessly write a check and save the day. Instead of an open checkbook, Arthur was met with absolute, deafening silence. The formidable Eleanor Vance and her husband sat rigidly on their antique sofa, their faces pale and horrified. Then, the most spectacular plot twist of the entire decade unfolded. The Grand Vance family, the untouchable political royalty of the South, erupted into a bitter, panicked argument. The pristine facade shattered into a million pieces right there in their drawing room. The truth came spilling out like toxic waste. The Vances were completely broke. Their generations of old money had dried up decades ago. They had squandered their remaining assets on failed political campaigns and highly leveraged investments. They were drowning under a mountain of hidden debt and facing imminent foreclosure on their historic properties. The only reason they had eagerly approved of Preston marrying my sister was because they were absolutely convinced that Arthur was a wildly successful real estate mogul. They believed my parents had massive reserves of liquid cash that could be used to fund Preston's upcoming run for the state senate. My parents had faked their wealth to secure an aristocratic son-in-law, and the Vances had faked their aristocratic wealth to secure a wealthy father-in-law. Both families stood in that grand parlor, staring at each other in sheer terror as they realized they had successfully conned each other. They had tied their sinking ships together, and they were all going down straight to the bottom of the ocean. The ultimate, crushing irony was that the only person in either family with actual, verifiable money was the tech engineer they had locked out of the venue. High society in Charleston survives on gossip, and a scandal of this magnitude could never stay hidden. The civil lawsuit filed by the yacht company became a matter of public record. Within days, local newspapers and elite social blogs were running explosive articles detailing the financial fraud of both families. The fallout was apocalyptic. Arthur's real estate brokerage lost every single one of its remaining clients overnight, destroying any shred of credibility he had left. Chloe and Preston were forced to cut their honeymoon short and return to a miserable, suffocating reality. They were trapped in a legal contract of a marriage defined entirely by mutual deceit, crushing debt, and deep-seated contempt from the very first day. Desperation makes people do incredibly foolish things. 2 weeks later, Arthur and Margaret actually flew across the country and drove a rental car straight to the sleek, towering glass headquarters of Aegis Nexus Solutions in Seattle. They showed up completely unannounced, storming into the corporate lobby demanding to see me. They were ready to play the victims, ready to weep and beg me to act as their personal goldmine to bail them out of the disaster they created. I received a call from the front desk. I took the elevator down to the ground floor, but I did not walk over to embrace them. I stood behind the marble security barrier, looking at their haggard, desperate faces. I did not raise my voice. I simply gave a short nod to the heavily armed building security team. I watched with absolute cold satisfaction as the guards physically flanked my screaming parents, escorted them forcefully out through the revolving glass doors, and handed them a permanent ban from ever stepping foot on the premises again. I did not stop there. I hired a ruthless corporate attorney to officially sever all legal and financial ties with the Carter family. My lawyer sent a massive stack of binding documents to Charleston, ensuring they could never claim me as a dependent or seek any form of financial support in the future. I also included a legally binding repayment plan for the original $10,000 deposit I had put down for the yacht. I forced them into an agreement where they had to pay me back in humiliating monthly installments, with a strict clause stating that a single missed payment would result in a direct lien against whatever pathetic assets they had left. Several months later, the chaos of their lives felt like a distant, irrelevant television show. I spent my winter holiday on a pristine, remote tropical island. I sat under the shade of a palm tree, holding a cold drink, surrounded by a group of genuine, wonderful friends I had made over the years. We laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed the pure peace of the ocean breeze. Looking around at the people who truly valued me, the people who celebrated my successes rather than hiding them, I finally understood the truth. Family is not about the people who share your bloodline. It is about the people who are willing to save a seat for you, even when you have absolutely nothing to give them but yourself. Thank you so much, my wonderful listeners, for tuning in to the very end of this incredible journey. Where in the world are you listening to this story from right now? Please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's story and want to help keep our team going, please support us by joining the Maya Revenge Stories Patreon. There, you can listen to our absolute best, highly exclusive true stories that are simply too intense to publish publicly on YouTube. You can join us right now by scanning the Patreon QR code on your screen or by clicking the direct link in the description or the pinned comment of this video. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next story.